Welcome to the All Things Real Estate Podcast with our very own Josh Barker. With more than 20 years of experience and over 5,000 properties sold, Josh brings a unique perspective to the real estate market. Let's get started.
So housing inventory,
Yeah.
the numbers are out.
Yep.
And the numbers are...
Well, right now the inventory is growing. We're over 550 homes for sale in the county, which is a very welcome change for home buyers out there right now, because prior, inventories were sitting stubbornly under 500, and when you're in a buyer in the market right now shopping, man, it's slim pickings.
So, I mean, that's, like you said, the inventory is going a little up, so that helps the buyers.
Yeah.
What does it do for the sellers?
Well, days on market's still shortening, and it started shortening really in November, December, January, February. So sellers are enjoying a little bit of a shorter market time anyway, because the buyer demand is still strong. The challenging thing, and you already know this, Joey, is that interest rates really have a pinch on affordability.
Yes.
And so even though the market's tight in terms of inventory relative to demand, rates are still a dominant factor in the whole equation. So, even though there's about 5 people that would like to buy that home, they can't be bidding it up $50,000 or $60,000 above market value and still buying it because, number one, it still has to appraise, but number two, because they can't afford it. The interest rates are just too high. So that's what's playing in right now. If I play the report, I did this in our market update at the beginning of the month, but here's what's interesting. Last month, and this would be for the month of April, 160 homes closed escrow.
That's very low, though.
It's low.
That's very, very low.
It's down 44.4% over last year when they closed 288. And, the beginning of the month when I do that market update, I can't really go into deep detail into that, but that issue right there has a lot to do with interest rates. Because when the rates went up, it has an impact when a buyer can qualify for, demand starts to fall off, and that showed up in last month's report.
So sellers that are coming to the market, they are selling their home. They're still not sitting on the market a really long time.
Right.
They're just not getting 5 buyers that are bidding 10% over market value anymore. Prices are probably much more in line with value, right?
Yeah. I think prices for the most part. I mean, in the spring every year, you see the optimistic seller come to market, and they try to set a price that might be higher than the recent comps, and that's just to find out if, hey, can we get that price or not? And if they can get that price, then that becomes the new comp. If they can't, then you got a lot of overpriced inventory, and you start making price adjustments until it gets pended, right? And that's kind of been the theme right now, is that we're going into the spring months, and you're going to see optimistic sellers in the market. But what buyers are really experiencing right now is that they're going to go out and shop, and they're going to comparison shop. They'll look at 5 to 8 homes in the price point, because that's typically about what they'll probably have available to them at any given time. And then if they're motivated and want to buy in that month, they're going to pick one of them, right? Mm-hmm. The thing is there's probably 4 or 5 other people like them that have done the same exact comparison shopping. And so they all end up landing on the same house. And then they all write offers. And then, of course, the seller gets to pick the one they want. Again, I don't want to get the wrong misconception out there or anything like that. But, even though you might get competing offers, it doesn't mean that you're going to sell for an infinite number above. But it does mean you'll probably get to pick your buyer in terms of the strength of the loan, the length of the escrow, probably have a few less concessions, stuff like that.
But it wasn't like there for a while. I mean, sellers they had it really, really good. A year ago, 2 years ago, There was some crazy stuff like, hey, we're going to sell the house, but we're going to live in it for free, rent free for 6 months. And people were like, okay. And it was just some pretty crazy, you were hearing some like, wow. Sellers had some huge negotiating ability.
You're right. A lot of that was about those interest rates too, right? I mean, you were getting interest rates in the 3% range, and a huge amount of motivation for a buyer to secure a home with that low rate. And the inventory was tight, as you know, because of the pandemic, and you had excessive buyer demand that exceeded what was normal, because you had buyers that were moving up here from outside of the area because they could work from home, kind of those remote buyers, migration pattern shifts that were happening. But all of that's slowing down now. We still have buyers, and we've said this on a previous podcast, we still have buyers coming from out of the area, but it's not the same as it was during the pandemic.
Are you seeing any issues with like the appraisal value coming back? You mentioned that in the beginning. Is there anything like the banks, the appraisers tightening up, and no, that's not going to cut it? Or
Yeah, the appraisers are doing a pretty decent job of, because the prices have, for the most part, either softened overall, or they're holding. And so it's making the job actually easier on the appraiser. A few years ago during the pandemic, when the prices were accelerating at 15 or 20% in a 12 to 18 month period of time.
Yeah.
Those are really tough months for an appraiser because everything is selling for above any comparables. But right now, unless you're a very unique property or in an outlying area with few sales, the appraisers are not having a tough time getting appraisals in.
One of the things that we
value.
Yeah. So obviously one of the big headwinds that we talk about that is the big headwind right now is interest rates. Where are interest rates right now?
Right now, rates are fluctuating right around 6.5% as of the podcast today. The Fed did come out recently and raise that discount rate by 1/4 basis point. It didn't necessarily transition into a higher mortgage rate. Rates are pretty much were prepared for that. I think the banks were already thinking that anyway. The real question, I think, if we wanted to talk about it for a minute, is just, what do we think the Fed's going to do next? Unemployment is still stubbornly low, although they would argue that labor participation is also low and compared to what it could be, and that might be the reason why unemployment looks so low. But I'm beginning to hear more and more for what I consider to be fairly credible sources that the Fed may not be raising rates this next meeting. They might decide just to hold. That's a good signal for the mortgage rates on the homes, because if that happens, I think that's going to be a canary in the
canary in the coal mine.
Yeah, there you go. That maybe we're going to start moving into a softer credit policy going forward.
And interest rates will start to come down a little
Potentially, yeah. I mean, Goldman Sachs, and it's been a few months since they said this, but they felt like rates were going to be in the mid-6s most this year, and I tend to believe that. I mean, a lot of the fact pattern they presented seemed to make a lot of sense, but they were fairly optimistic in saying this again. It was a few months ago that rates could be in the 5s next year. And so for a lot of folks, they're just waiting for those 5s to show up again.
And so we talked about this before, that usually what ends up happening is the market will react to the interest rates coming down faster than the interest rates come down. That's the whole idea of like, buy the house now, marry the house, date the interest rate.
Yep.
Because if you wait for the interest rate to come down, the market will start, especially a market like this, the markets get thrown in together, but Reading is such low inventory.
Yep.
And so, what would you call it? I guess priced good against the rest of the state. The prices here are still reasonable, which you hear some of the prices in the other parts of the state, and I'm just, who can afford that? It just sounds ridiculous, right?
Yeah, that's a good point.
So waiting for that interest rate to come down, just know that the housing is probably going to go up. Now that would depend on the segment. Because when I think about this, I'm thinking of homes under 400,000. Because we talked about the cost of replenishment, right?
Yeah, I would say that it starts to nosedive right after 600,000. So 600,000 and below, there's some demand, and I could see that just even on this report. I'm holding my hand right now if I can see it without my glasses on. But if you were looking like at 600,000 and below, that's where all the numbers are in the double digits: 24, 35, 25, 19. But as soon as you get over 700,000, it drops down to 3. And then 4, and then 6. It's super low. And again, we were saying earlier that the buyer demand in those lower price points is pretty high. Maybe 3 or 4 buyers interested in that one home. Well, if the rate were to drop 0.5%, that increases purchasing power by 5%. All those offers would probably be 5% higher today.
And under $400,000, you got 2 major buying groups. You got first-time buyers and you got investors.
Yeah.
Right. So investors usually don't, in the Reading area, aren't going to buy like $800,000 rental, but they are going to buy a $290,000 rental.
Yeah, and there's not a ton of there's some local investor activity still going on right now. A little bit of probing, as what I would call it, from some institutional investors, larger size. Recently, our office has been getting inquiries from those folks out of the area that are interested in investing in real estate up here. And, we have our, we're servicing them as we can, but we're heavily focused on the investors and the home buyers and move up buyers, move down buyers, first time home buyers here locally. But we are starting to see that. And it makes me a bit nervous because, this isn't Phoenix. This isn't Nashville. This isn't Houston or Austin, where you have these massive amounts of homes available and investors are just a portion of it. If you had institutional investors moving into Shasta County purchasing real estate, that would have a really negative impact, in my opinion, on the ability for our local buyers to purchase. because, it's a supply and demand issue. But right now, for those who are watching, we're not seeing too many big investors coming in right now.
And we were talking before we started this about some of the factors that were affecting that lower part. One of the big one was you were talking about the cost of lumber, right? It had reduced dramatically.
Oh man. Well, we talked about this last year, right? I mean, earlier on in our podcast, and I was like, well, I think lumber is going to fall. And I had a few people throwing darts at me for saying that. I didn't necessarily agree with it. And I'm like, well, if you just think about it for a minute, if you've got a lease on a piece of land, and that lease is that you have to extract lumber over a period of time, well, and that lease is coming towards an end, what are you going to do?
You're going to get the lumber off the land.
Yeah, you're going to, right? But what happens if you have lumber that's sitting in the yard that hasn't been turned into actual lumber to deliver to the store yet? What are you going to do with that?
Reduce the price.
Yeah. And that's where it's come from. So right now, if you were to look, I got this. This is our lumber statistics that comes out, and that's Trading Economics. So if anybody wants to look at it for themselves, welcome to do that. But if you look at May of 2021, the cost for 1,000 board feet was $1,750. Then in March of 22, it dropped to $1,480. And right now, this is the shocker. Right now, it's quoted right now $355 to 1,000 board feet.
So it's down 80%.
It's down 80%.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's down 80%. Now, lumber doesn't represent 100% of the cost of building a home. I'm not sure exactly what the percentage is. I'm going to guess right now and say it might be maybe 15 or 20% of the overall cost, maybe 15% actually. But now what's not dropping pricing yet though is your central heating and air units, your circuit breakers, some of your plumbing fixtures, and those things that really can be purchased on the world market at ease, washer, dryers, refrigerators, all the appliances. Those haven't necessarily come down in cost. Nothing like this anyway.
And not labor.
No, labor hasn't either.
And not permits.
Well, yeah. Well, here's another one. Let me pull this out for you. I did this one on our market report actually beginning of the month too. Just take a wild guess if you didn't watch it. How many permits have been pulled in the city of Reading to build a new home since the beginning of the year?
Well, if I tell you, it's because I cheated.
Oh, okay.
But here, I'll go with it. I don't know, Josh. 50?
No, that would have been last year's numbers, right? So right now we're sitting at 7 permits pulled in the city of Reading since January. If you go back 1 year ago, there was 70. If you go back the year before that in 21, it was 67.
So down 90% roughly from normal.
Oh yeah, it is 90% actually, right on the nose. It's pretty incredible.
Someone took a math class.
Somebody took a math class.
Thank you.
And so here's the question that I think we all have to ask is, okay, so imagine this for a minute. You're a contractor. You have a framing crew. You have or you have a finish crew, whatever it is that you do. And there's not a lot of homes to be built, right? You get into competing bidding situations where somebody wants to build something. They go to multiple contractors and say, give me a bid. If you want to be competitive, you're going to have to present the best offer you can to build that for the lowest cost, right?
Right.
What happened last time, and this is when I go back to like 2005, 2008, in that range where the shift took place. I watched contractors go back to their crews and they renegotiated their wages. They went back and said, here's the deal, guys. We're not busy right now. I can't win. I can't be competitive in our bidding situations. And so if everybody's willing to take a haircut basically, or a pay cut, and bring their labor costs down, we can keep everybody busy. But it's kind of like a conversation that some of those contractors back then had to have. It makes me wonder if those kinds of conversations are going to start to take place now.
So because that's going to be a big one. And that's one that the locals can actually have a control over. They don't have control over fixtures,
That's right.
And appliance and stuff. Labor's the second big one.
Yep.
Have you heard of any conversations like that? I mean,
not that I'm willing to quote. I've had conversations with contractors that have said that things are getting slow, and so that to me kind of tells me that I have a feeling of what's going to happen next. What people have to keep in context is that, in 2003, 4, and 5, the real estate market was on fire. It was like the American dream was being realized everywhere. The problem is that the whole housing market got way out ahead of its skis. And so by about 2007, 2008, the American dream kind of turned into the American nightmare. where all of a sudden we had massive amounts of inventory. It was very difficult to find buyers to purchase it because the inventory exceeded the buyer demand. And contractors had to make some really tough decisions. Unfortunately, a lot of them left. They had to go move to locations where they could find other kinds of work to do other than construction. Like some went up to like the Dakotas to do some like mineral extraction. I don't remember what it was back then, but those are the kinds of things that we've seen.
Are we seeing any of that now? Have we seen any of that in Reading over the last year?
Well, it's not been the mass exodus. No, I don't think that at all. I think that there was enough projects on the books currently that people have been able to stay busy. I'm really hyper focused on the next 3 to 4 months. I feel like this is going to be a pivotal 3 to 4 month period where we're going to start to see some decisions being made. I would say at the executive level, but what I mean is by anybody that's really running these companies.
So if you got an estimate 8 months ago, you might want to go back to market in a few months and get
100%
to get a new estimate.
Yeah, respectfully, I'm sorry, contractors out there. I don't mean to disregard your hard work or labor, but yes, I think if you're in the market right now to build anything, it's probably pretty wise to go out there and see what those bids might look like. The thing you got to keep in mind though too is that the pressure of additional building restrictions, permitting issues and considerations, meeting state of California requirements and things like that, those are ever changing. So the longer you wait, the more red tape you're going to have to cut through. But yeah, I would be checking pricing right now.
It's going to take a while for that to hit like the market. That's one of the big things about building is it's that accordion effect where it's so slow to, like you said, and they overbuilt where they just overshot the demand.
They did.
And then so what they do is it recoils way back, and then as demand goes, they don't pick up on it fast enough. It's just because of how long it takes.
Yeah.
To like I said, if we talked about last time, if we decided to build a house right now, I mean, I don't think if you started today, I don't think you can move in within 12 months. I don't think you can move in within 1 year.
Yeah, well,
you'd be on a very fast pace to pull that off.
I don't know if I would 100% agree with that. No, and the only reason why is I see what that national home builder is doing here in town right now. They're finishing products in 6 months or less, and so it's getting done. The question is can it get done by your contractor, right? I think right now with the access to labor we have, it won't be a lumber issue, it won't be a labor issue. It might be a transformer or it might be a circuit panel breaker box that, has delayed you, or windows, or it's going to be something that's unique to your property that perhaps is creating that bottleneck, if you will, for you to get your home done in a shorter amount of time. It'll probably be a supply disruption more than anything else that would prevent it from getting done fast. The reason why that national home builder is doing well is because they have enough products sitting on warehouses and yards somewhere that they can just pull. I mean, they're not buying 10 windows; they're buying 10,000 windows. So they've got access to move inventory around,
and they've got tons of projects across the country, so they can just move supplies and people.
Yeah,
exactly.
And
it's logistically easy for them to manage.
It is. And if you look at the market right now, though, it's still tight. I mean, if you look at the rental market, for example, right now in the state of California, it's quoted that the rental rate currently today is 3.9%. The last time it was this low, and it was actually just a tiny bit lower, was in 2016, and it was 3.6. And that's the lowest that I can find on record. Prior to that was 2001, it was 4.2. And, I can remember actually, my wife and I moved back to town in 99 I got out of the service and I was in college in Southern California. And when we moved back to town, it was in 99, started working with Michael Medley actually at Prudential Medley Real Estate. And we were trying to find a rental, and it wasn't easy. And it got really bad by 2001. It dropped, it was probably in the 7-8% range in the late 90s, like 97, 98, and then it dropped down to 4.2. And then it did it again, like I said, in 16. Right now at 3.9, that means that there's not a lot of rentals available. There's not a whole lot of new building permits being pulled. The whole crunch on the market right now is interest rates. That's the whole crunch. When rates drop, I think you'll see everything start to move forward.
I think it'll be like the accordion effect where it'll just overshoot again. Just all of a sudden, if interest rates come down, the market will just catch fire again, and our inventory will drop. But who knows? It's back and forth. That might spark a bunch of people that weren't going to sell. Now they're going to sell because they were locked into a great interest rate, so they couldn't stomach selling the home they were in for with a low interest rate to then buy a home with a much bigger interest rate. So the cycle just keeps on going and going.
Well, I mean, not to be on the political side of things, but just looking at the economics of it, our population's going to spike in the next couple of years. It already has in the last year and a half, but it's going to spike even more in the next year and a half. And, the amount of people moving into the country right now, I mean, legal, illegal, doesn't really matter, just demand on housing, period. See, before we used to be able to, you kind of could anticipate based on birth rate, what the construction was going to be. I mean, I would imagine, these large national home builders were able to identify how many housing units would likely be needed at the national level, and they could decide how many of those units they wanted to participate in. Well, right now, that's all off the table. I mean, you got massive amount of housing needs right now that we have to figure out how we're going to meet them.
Yeah, and everything's, I bring this up all the time because I think that this is one of the flaws in how we communicate about it, is that we throw these monster markets around, and it's like Reading is a very unique market. Very unique, very separate from the state, very separate from national. There are headwinds and tailwinds that affect us, like interest rate. That's the big one that transcends the boundaries within the United States.
Yep.
But everything else, the permits pulled and the amount of inventory, such strong tailwinds that they don't have that issue in Los Angeles. They're not having these issues in other major cities. So I'm wondering about, when I think about Reading market, I don't see any pressure getting taken off the lower segments.
No,
I don't see it at all. If anything, if interest rates come down, then it's full speed. It's all tailwinds. It's all just go crazy again.
That's kind of a good point you bring up. I get asked that question quite a bit. You probably do too, about why don't the builders build smaller homes?
How?
Well, and you're right, because, the cost for curb, gutter, and sidewalk, street lights, fire hydrants, water, sewer systems, electrical systems, all that stuff, when you run it down a street, it all costs the same, right?
Mm-hmm.
The more lots that you can fit in there, the better off you are. However, it costs money to build a home, and bedrooms and baths and kitchens and central heating and airs and roofs, for the most part, they're going to be in a similar pricing segment. So as you increase the square footage of the home, you get a better return on your investment, or the builder's investment. So they don't start to make actual profit really till about 1,600 square feet or higher. That's when it starts to show up. Anything smaller than that, and it gets really hard for them to do it, at least here in Shasta County. And whether or not that changes in the future, I don't know. It seems like with insurance, the cost of insurance to be in the outlying areas, it seems like all the development's kind of getting pushed more and more and more into the city. And so maybe we'll start to see things go more vertical over time.
I think that's along those same lines. You see all the ADU, trying to get people to put ADUs in their backyard.
Oh, sure.
That's part of that pressure. You've already got the existing lot. Now we just maybe got to do a little bit of a trench to the water, but it's already sitting on the street.
Yep. Those homes are costing you in the low twos,
for small.
Small footprint. For 900 square feet or whatever it is. It's in the low twos. The city of Reading, actually, for anybody who might be interested, they have plans down there that you can purchase at a discount. Already have a streamlined process for approval. So you could build a pretty attractive home on your existing property that you have a house on now, as long as you can meet the setback requirements and stuff like that. We haven't seen a ton of that being done yet. And it's, again, because the unit cost for that house is so high. The rental market will support it. Right now, the median rent in Shasta County, I think, for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 2-car garage, about 1,500 square feet, is going to run you about $1,800 a month.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's rentdata.org would give you that actual detail. Sacramento, it's $2,100 a month.
Yeah, it's not that much higher for Sacramento. I would have thought it would be, substantially, but that's not that much. It's about 11%.
Yeah, I think the composition of that home changes, though. That's their median rent down there, right? Ours is a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 2-car garage, white picket fence, right? Where down there, it may not be I didn't look to see what that composition is. My guess is it's a much smaller home.
I don't know if you've ever been to Chico, but when I lived in Chico, the same kind of pressure was there.
Yeah. And
so everybody's garage was a B unit. So there was a lot of that. There was a lot of all the garages were turned into, the detached garages, or there was just, it was built much tighter, and you could tell it was a secondary thought. It wasn't the first phase of homes, they didn't build them that way, but you could tell they converted them that way. Then the second phase, they were building them to build.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're going to see that in town a lot. I think you're going to see a house built in the 60s, and then you're going to see the brand new 2023, modern looking home that's 900 square feet on the same lot.
Or the detached garage completely, remodeled and looks like a little home, and it's got the, 145B.
Yep.
There was a lot of that in Chico, and it was just because the premium of land and the pressure of, the university and needing rentals and stuff like that. So I think we're seeing similar type forces at play.
Yep.
Where else can you do it? Like you said, or go vertical, which they're doing downtown.
Yeah.
Where they've got the zoning where the ground floor might be retail or commercial or something like that. And then second and third floors are residential.
Yeah, it looks pretty good. I mean, there's a lot of units coming up for that. And the real question I think I'm going to be curious about is what will be the demand for those types of units in comparison to a subdivision home over time? I agree that I think a lot of the younger kids enjoy having, the city life, if you will, downtown. I think that's probably fun. But as soon as you start wanting pets and, kids running around in the backyard and all that stuff, I mean, it starts to limit your options really quick. When the real reason I bring that up is that because I've had people ask me, where should we invest? And it's like, well, single family is still done really well. I'm not saying that, getting into a huge apartment complex, the cap rates can change and stuff like that, but most people can't afford that. Buying a nice little rental, I mean, that's a good way to invest for the long haul, for sure. And I think the demand's going to still be there. The units that we're seeing in downtown, there's a lot. And my understanding is that most of those multifamily are getting rented out fairly quickly. But if we get into a situation where the rental market starts to soften, what softens first? Subdivision homes or those homes over there that are in that higher density living?
I'm picking up by your question. It's going to be those higher density homes.
Is that what you think?
I don't know. Honestly, I never thought about it. Mm-hmm. When I look at somewhere like New York, and I don't understand how people live there. I don't understand how people live vertically, right? Like you said, and you see like TV shows or wherever the guy takes his dog down and there's like a 1 foot by 1 foot square piece of grass where you're just standing there to go to the bathroom and he immediately picks it up because there's concrete everywhere else, right? And then it's take the dog right back up to the 13th floor. Yeah. So to me, that's like, what? But I guess
a different
it's what you get used to.
Yeah. It's and that's true. I think it's, I think that, the landscape for real estate is going to change. I mean, we know for sure that we're short housing units overall. Both locally in the state and across the U.S. And for all the reasons we've already talked about. It's not going to be one size fits all or one answer fits all for the problem to solve it. But gosh, I really wish the state of California would recognize their responsibility for some of the challenges we're running into, because the number one solution to home prices is supply. If you want home prices to stop going up, or if you want them to soften, increase supply. Bottom line, increase supply. How do you increase supply? Well, deregulate some of the policies that are on the books now that make it more restrictive for development. And, but nobody wants to do that because, everybody has their own idea of what should be fair and right in the world. But with all those rules, that there comes cost. And so, I'm curious. I'm so curious to see what 5 years from now brings. Are we going to get to the point where at the state level they go, you know what, we've kind of overshot here. We're going to need to pull a few things back policy-wise. We need to bring those costs down. Or are they going to stick to, the agenda they currently have and continue to keep those prices high? If I'm out of the market right now and don't own any real estate or and aspire to it someday, I hope the prices come down. But for someone like me on the other side of that spectrum where I own a good amount of real estate, it doesn't even hurt us because that just means that my current assets go up in value.
Exactly.
So I would like to see the state continue to be proactive with solving some of the housing issues, but it can't only be solved at the private level. I think the state's going to have to participate, and the easiest way for them to do it without it costing everybody a ton of money is if they were just to cut some of the red tape.
Well, the good news is the governor put out his budget. Yeah. And he's only $10 billion over. He had $10 billion. Wait,
we're going to be at a $30 billion deficit.
Wait, we're at a $30 billion deficit, which is only $10 billion more than he had originally projected.
It happens.
So that might be the motivation necessary.
But we're the
Wait a second, that's going to reduce income.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to get interesting. There's some programs that'll be going away as a result of that. I don't know what those will be. Leave it for the smarter people to figure that out. But a $30 billion deficit when we don't have the luxury of printing money means a couple of things. Job cuts, right, which relates to our podcast about impact on housing and things like that. There'll probably be some job cuts as programs go away. And then also you're probably looking at some sort of debt that's going to have to be assumed. So we'll be trying to sell some of California's debt to somebody else to buy it so we can finance what we don't cut. And that's just economics 101.
I wouldn't put a high probability on the tax or on the cutting of the budget.
Yeah.
On the get that out, Joey. Yeah, I don't see it doesn't feel like the people that it feels more like just taking on debt, just getting somebody else to buy, but I don't know who.
I think they're going to first have to go in and start looking at programs that would need to be, rethought. What's the word they use? Reimagined.
Yeah.
Right? They'll probably, I think that's the words they'll use for that. And then what's left will likely be a negotiation of, issuing bonds or something along those lines to try to fund some of the stuff they want to keep. But, and they keep on pointing the finger, the stock market's softer. It's like, stock market's not that soft at the moment. Crypto blew up. And a lot of those were based out of California, but we shouldn't have been based in a state's economy on a Ponzi scheme anyway. Not that all crypto is Ponzi, but a lot of it was.
Bitcoin's doing really well. No, most of it was Ponzi. It was most of it. All the meme coins. There's a bunch of legal coming against that. There was people didn't understand what crypto was about or what the different why Bitcoin, why Ethereum, where's the potential of this kind of stuff, and then you just have actors and influencers going, hey, I'm on the latest coin, Dragon Coin, and you're just like, well, what's the concept behind this? I make a lot of money. And it's like nobody caught that. And it's like no regulation.
No.
So it was
that's kind of where I look at for the state, and I just go, well, we have the largest state economically speaking in the union. I would say definitely the most beautiful state in the union. We have great access to ports. We got the ability to bring in and out lots of goods and services. We have amazing weather to top it off, and then somehow we still manage to mess that up. And at the state level, I don't know. I'm hopeful that as we continue to see people moving up here, and getting back to just talking about Reading, we're bringing in some pretty cool development here. As the state, kind of the bigger cities, it seems like they're. I'm not going to say mismanaged because I don't really know all their issues, but whatever's happening down there is not all that attractive for the people that are there. And we're seeing more people move here as a result of that. I don't know if it was on a podcast or not. Hey, Marcus, tell me if I ever said this before, but I had some kids that were about Marcus's age that came in. He's not on a mic right now, so you guys won't be able to hear him. But when I had this conversation with this group of kids, and I said, hey, what do you think about Reading? Why are you guys here? Like in their 20s. I'm like, why are you guys here? Why are you guys down in the big city? And they told me that they went down to the big city. They hung out there for 3 to 4 months. They realized they liked Reading better, and they came back. And I was like, really? And it was a lot of them too. I didn't ask like one kid. I asked like 10 of them. They're all hanging out together. And unanimously, they were all giving me the same answer. And I kind of walked away kind of proud. I was like, you know what? That's pretty awesome that this community now in Shasta County is retaining some of our younger population, and that we're solving something for them to the extent that they like it here better than somewhere else. And thank God for that.
Yeah, the next generation.
That's right.
Did he? Do you know when he said that, Marcus?
I don't know when he said that.
I wasn't there.
Yeah, it was probably.
I'll take his word for it, though.
I know the only thing that would take me away from Reading is just bigger jobs that aren't here yet because Reading's small.
Yeah, bigger jobs. Yeah, that's true.
When my generation left, that's part of it. The late 80s, early 90s, the local economy, there wasn't any.
Yeah.
There were no jobs.
Yeah.
It was, minimum wage, which back then, I think it was maybe still $6 or something. It was pretty low, maybe even lower than that. And then there was, the mills had some, there was UPS, there was some, but we had like a huge gap.
Yeah.
And so young people, they had to leave.
Yeah.
They had to go.
Yeah, you're right.
But that seemed to have come, especially with the telecommute and telework, you know, and the internet economy and things like that. I've met more and more young people in the last couple of years that, you know, work for large corporations, but they work from home. They're in customer service, they're in sales, or even HR or something, you know, it's because it's log into a software product, you know, and do your work, and just more and more. And so suddenly that puts Reading back on the map. And it, you know, as we've said before in previous episodes, of that, you know, you can either buy a house in Reading, as much as we're talking about the prices and everything, still when you compare it to Sacramento or San Jose or LA or anything like that, you can't buy down there for $400,000. No. There's nothing for sale for $400,000. Yeah. And here you can still buy a very nice home for $400,000.
That's right.
So if, you know, if you can work geometrically, if you can work geometrically and then take that math and use it to study geology, then you're in the right spot. But, you know, if you can live anywhere. Yeah. You know.
Well, I mean, you got affordable housing, great climate, wonderful, beautiful surroundings, still in the state of California with easy access to just about everything. That's why we're growing. I mean, we've said this a couple of times. Reading is now been found out, and it's growing. And people, I think, are realizing just all the really cool amenities that we actually have to offer. So good job.
Now that using that geometry to guess geology. But especially now that the lake's full again, I know it's a small thing, but, you know, this time last year, we were pretty like, wow, it was low. It was like scary low. Yep. And now I believe if it's not full, it is real close to full.
Actually, it is full.
Okay.
I was riding my mountain bike up there this weekend, and it was just dribbling over the top of the dam.
Nice.
It was full. So, ladies and gentlemen, Shasta Lake is full. Come up and hang out with us. Enjoy the boats. Enjoy the fishing. Everything.
That's huge.
It's huge.
So that's one of the single biggest attractions up here. Oh, it's not the concerts. It's not the NFL football team, right?
No.
It's nature.
It's nature, man. So we got Shasta Lake's full. Whiskey Town's full. Our trails are beautiful and just filled with awesome people. They're having a great time. If you're into the outdoors, this is the place to be. So, well, thanks again for your time this month. Appreciate you very much. And we'll catch you next month.
And I'll work on my vocabulary.
That sounds good, buddy.
If you're enjoying the All Things Real Estate podcast, please feel free to subscribe, rate, and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. That helps others find the show, and we really appreciate it. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next episode.